An Introduction to Shin Buddhism. Sakyamuni Buddha. Sakyamuni Buddha was an actual historical person who lived in India some 2,500 years ago. He was born as a prince and was raised to become a king. The young prince reflected deeply on life. Although very sheltered in his upbringing, he sought occasions to expose himself to the realities of disease, old age, and death. He thus came to recognize and be concerned with the basic truth that life inevitably involves suffering. At age 29, Sakyamuni left his home and family to search for a solution to the problem of suffering. None of the teachers he went to could give him a satisfactory answer. He even denied himself the basic necessities of life, but this brought him no closer to his goal. Just at the point when he was about to die from deliberately not eating, he accepted an offer of nourishment and went on with his quest. Shortly thereafter, through his continuing intense efforts, he did finally attain the supreme enlightenment of Buddhahood at age 35. He discovered the solution to the problem of human suffering. Rather than withdrawing from others to enjoy the bliss of enlightenment, Sakyamuni Buddha spent the last 45 years of his life exerting himself to share with others the truths which he had discovered. He did so out of great compassion for humankind. The Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. After his death, Sakyamuni's various teachings were recorded in the form of Buddhist scriptures called sutras. The Reverend Kenryu T. Tsuji, former bishop of the Buddhist Churches of America, outlined the Buddha's early teaching of the Four Noble Truths as follows. 1. Truth of suffering. Because life is imperfect, there is always suffering, friction, and disharmony. 2. Truth of the cause of suffering. We suffer because through ignorance we do not see things in their true light. For example, we consider impermanent things as permanent and become attached. Thus, when we lose them, we are deeply hurt. To regard impermanence as impermanence is truth. 3. Truth of the cessation of suffering. The causes of suffering can be extinguished, and a perfect state can be established. This perfect state is called by such terms as nirvana, enlightenment, pure land, and Buddhahood. 4. Truth of the path to the cessation of suffering. The causes of suffering can be extinguished by following the Noble Eightfold Path as described as follows. 1. Right views. To keep ourselves free from prejudice, superstition, and delusion, and to see the true nature of life. 2. Right thoughts. To turn away from the evils of this world and to direct our minds toward righteousness. 3. Right speech. To refrain from pointless and harmful talk and to speak kindly and courteously to all. 4. Right conduct. To see that our deeds are peaceful, benevolent, compassionate, and pure. To live the teaching of the Buddha daily. 5. Right livelihood. To earn our living in such a way as to entail no evil consequences. 6. Right effort. To direct our efforts incessantly to the overcoming of ignorance and selfish desires. 7. Right mindfulness. To cherish good and pure thoughts, for all that we say and do arises from our thoughts. 8. Right meditation. To concentrate our will on the Buddha, his life, and his teaching. The Great Vehicle Teachings. In the Buddha's later teachings, as reflected in the wonderful and profound Great Vehicle Sutras, Sakyamuni reveals that he is actually an incarnation of the eternal Buddha, whom Shin Buddhists refer to and worship as Amida Buddha. Those sutras also make many references to transcendent bodhisattvas, emanations of Amida, who act compassionately to relieve suffering in all of its various forms. They are true friends of humankind. To accomplish their goal of eliminating suffering and helping all to attain the perfect enlightenment of Buddhahood, bodhisattvas practice the 6 perfections. 1. Charity. 2. Observance of the Buddhist precepts. 3. Patience. 4. Zeal. 5. Meditation. 6. Wisdom. In the Threefold Lotus Sutra, the Buddha's accomplishment of the 6 perfections is described thus. For infinite past eons, the world-honored one has practiced all manner of virtues with effort to bring benefit to us human beings. Unsparing of his person as of his possessions, he gave all, his head, eyes, and brain, to people as alms. Keeping the Buddha's precepts of purity, he never did any harm, even at the cost of his life. He never became angry, even though beaten with sword and staff, or though cursed and abused. He never became tired in spite of long exertion. He kept his mind at peace day and night and was always in meditation. Learning all the law ways, with his deep wisdom, he has seen into the capacity of living beings. Making obeisance altogether, we submit ourselves to the one who has completed all hard things. The easy path. Permit me at this point to share at a personal level. There was a time in my life when I was arrogant enough to think that I could approximate some of the virtues noted above. I restructured my life to test myself out in this regard. I must report that I failed miserably. Sakyamuni taught that there was once an extraordinary bodhisattva named Hozo or Dharmakara, who was intensely aware that most people would have an impossible time consistently adhering to the Buddhist precepts. Dharmakara created an easy path to enlightenment, thus becoming Amida Buddha, the one universal Buddha of infinite light and infinite life, of whom all other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are manifestations. For a person with gross imperfections, such as myself, the easy path teaching prescribes only one requirement: having faith in Amida's power to save. I am fully convinced that at the moment my lifetime ends, this miserable round of births and deaths will finally be terminated, and I will thankfully at last be reborn in Amida's pure land of bliss, thus attaining my ultimate goal of becoming a fully enlightened Buddha. In the Tanisho, Saint Shin Ran, the founder of Shin Buddhism, was said to have put it this way, quote, "Saved by the inconceivable working of Amida's vow, I shall realize birth into the Pure Land." The moment you entrust yourself thus, you are brought to share in the benefit of being grasped by Amida, never to be abandoned. Know that the primal vow of Amida makes no distinction between people young and old, good and evil. Only the entrusting of yourself to it is essential. For it was made to save the person in whom karmic evil is deep-rooted and whose blind passions abound. Thus, entrusting yourself to the primal vow requires no performance of good. Nor is there any need to despair of the evil you commit, for no act is so evil that it obstructs the working of Amida's primal vow. Close quote. Amida Buddha's primal vow. Dharmakara Bodhisattva felt great compassion for those of us unable to fulfill the practices necessary to achieve enlightenment on our own. He therefore resolved that he would give up his own attainment of Buddhahood unless, when he became a Buddha, he could establish a land free of all suffering, where anyone with faith in him could be reborn. Then he backed up this great universal vow with the massive power of innumerable virtues and good deeds, which he performed over many eons of time. Dharmakara successfully fulfilled his great vow and became Amida Buddha, the savior of humankind. In the larger Pure Land Sutra, which Shin Ran referred to as the true teaching, Sakyamuni describes in detail the wondrous world in the western part of the universe which Amida created, a world free from defilement and pain. Amida says to us in essence, quote, "You who rely on the saving power of my embrace rather than on your own self-efforts toward spiritual perfection will assuredly gain birth in my paradise when your earthly life ends. You will immediately, at that time, attain Buddhahood." The power of Amida's vow is definitely sufficient to bring us peace of mind in this life and to get us to our desired destination in the next. All we need do is have faith in his power to save us. Our natural response to this merciful gift is to joyfully and thankfully call out his name, Namo Amida Butsu. Aspects of faith. The emphasis within Shin Buddhism is obviously on faith. The past bishop of the Buddhist Churches of America, Reverend Saigon H. Yamaoka, has attempted to clarify the nature of this faith in his teaching of the 6 aspects. 1. Expanding. 2. Self-reflection. 3. Great compassion. 4. Great joy. 5. Gratitude. 6. Life of meaning and growth. Amida Buddha arranges for us to hear the true teaching of the compassionate vow. He uses various means to cause us to expand toward a more awakened state in our innermost mind. We doubt and we question. We wonder and hope. And as we increasingly experience the light of Amida's truth, we are gently led to reflect on ourselves in a more objective manner. We do not like what we see. Each of us is filled with a variety of painful karmic evils. Amida's compassion and the guidance of good teachers allow us to see ourselves as we truly are, without the power to attain perfect enlightenment on our own. When Shin Ran calls himself a fool, can we dare not be humble? Amida sees our pitiful condition. He embraces us and shows us his great compassion in our everyday lives. We can trust him to accept us as we are, and we can trust that our future is determined through faith in his merciful vow. The faith that develops within us leads to a sense of wholeness, peace, and freedom. We are actually allowed to taste the great joy that will be a constant experience for us when we are born in Amida's pure land of bliss. Quote, "I, a wretched failure in this life, will be a victorious Buddha in the next." Close quote. Can such an awareness produce anything but a joyful mind? Let us awaken to the embrace and support of Amida. Let us be joyful that the unattainable has become attainable through his great compassion. Let us receive his love with gratitude. Gratitude is the quintessential feature of the Shinjin or faith experience. We know that Amida accepts us despite our deep and shameful faults. We express our gratitude by saying the Nembutsu, the Buddha's name, Namo Amida Butsu, and by helping those around us to the best of our ability. I am so thankful for all the seen and unseen things which make life possible. Namo Amida Butsu. By expressing our gratitude in concrete ways, such as sharing the true teaching and showing responsibility for the welfare of others, we get a glimpse of the world of the Buddha. Our life is thus enriched by deepening cycles of meaning and growth as we exert our efforts toward personal integrity. Thank you, O Amida, for all these wonderful gifts. Namo Amida Butsu. Total reliance on Amida. Saint Shin Ran encouraged us toward good behavior in this life with the reminder that we do not take poisons just because we know there is a cure. Such good behavior, however, is not to be seen as something that is, quote, ours, for us to be proud of, nor is it to be seen as in any way whatsoever contributing to the attainment of our ultimate goal. The Tanisho excerpts below illustrate these points, quote, good thoughts arise in us through the beckoning of past good, and we come to think and do evil through the working of karmic evil. The late Master Shin Ran said, quote, know that every evil act done, even the slightest, has its cause in past karma. The Master once asked me, quote, Wenbo, do you firmly accept all that I say? Yes, that is so. Then will you adhere to whatever I tell you, he repeated. I humbly affirm this, whereupon he said, quote, first, I want you to kill 1,000 people. If you do, you will definitely attain birth in the Pure Land. I responded, though you instruct me thus, I'm afraid it is not in me to kill even one person. Then how can you insist that you won't deviate from what I tell you? He continued, quote, there is an important lesson here. If we could always act as we wished, then when I told you to kill 1,000 people in order to attain birth, you should have immediately gone out to do it. But since you lacked the karmic cause from your actions in past lives enabling you to do this, you do not kill even a single person. It is not that you keep from killing because your heart is good. In the same way, a person may wish not to harm anyone and yet end up killing 100 or 1,000 people. Thus he spoke. There was in those days a person who had fallen into a mistaken understanding. He asserted that since the vow was made to save the evil person, one should purposely choose to do evil, taking it as the cause of birth. When rumors of misdeeds gradually reached Shin Ran, to end adherence to that wrong understanding, he wrote in a letter, quote, do not take a liking to poison just because there is an antidote. This is by no means to imply that evil can obstruct one's attainment of birth. On another occasion he said, quote, if it were only by observing precepts and upholding rules that we could entrust ourselves to the primal vow, how could we ever become free of the cycle of birth and death? The Master further stated, among those who make their way in this world, drawing nets in the seas and rivers, or fishing, and those who carry on their lives hunting beasts in the moors and mountains, or taking fowl, and those who pass their lives conducting trade or cultivating fields and paddies, there is no distinction. When the karmic cause within so moves us, we will do anything. Close quote. Shin Ran. Shin Ran is the model for our life. He was humble and always grateful to be living in the embrace of Amida. His life is described as follows by Reverend Tsuji in An Outline of Buddhism, quote, Shin Ran Shonin, Shonin means holy man, was born near Kyoto, Japan on May 21st, 1173. He lost his father when he was 4, and later at the age of 9 he lost his mother. These two tragic experiences had a great influence on the mind of the boy. He decided to enter the priesthood. He entered a monastery and studied under the guidance of the chief abbot. Nearly a year later, he went to Mount Hai, center of Buddhist learning at that time. For 20 years he studied there. His high moral qualities and excellent scholastic record were so outstanding that he could have easily been appointed to the head of all the temples on high. However, he declined the position, for he was not in search of fame or position. He was earnestly searching for spiritual insight. This he was able to gain after giving up his studies on Mount High and after entering the monastery of Honan, who was teaching a way of salvation through faith in the power of Amida Buddha. Shin Ran's life thereafter became a calm and peaceful life, regardless of his conditions. He constantly recited the Nembutsu, Namu Amida Butsu, as an expression of deep gratitude for the compassionate heart of Amida. Shin Ran Shonin realized that there was a teaching that enabled the ordinary person to lead a true Buddhist life without shutting himself up in a monastery. The Buddhist priesthood was in an uproar. Here was a priest who taught salvation by the power of Amida, which was contrary to the recognized religious traditions of the day, namely, salvation through moral and mental discipline. Both Shinran and Honan were banished from Kyoto. After many years in exile, at the age of 52, Shinran wrote his most famous work, Kyogao Shinsho, Teaching, Practice, Faith, and Attainment. This book, considered the most important of Shinran's writings, laid the doctrinal foundation of Shin Buddhism. In 1232, when he was 60, he turned his footsteps to Kyoto, arriving in 1235. There he remained until his passing on January 16, 1262, writing and preaching to the countless followers who came to hear the teachings of the Nembutsu. As Reverend Tsuji's account indicates, Shinran did not lead a life seeking fame. When people did come to him, he responded thus, as described in the Tanisho quote, "Each of you has crossed the borders of more than 10 provinces to come to see me, undeterred by concern for your bodily safety, solely to inquire about the way to birth in the land of bliss. But if you imagine in me some special knowledge of a way to birth other than the Nembutsu, or a familiarity with writings that teach it, you are greatly mistaken. If that is the case, you would do better to visit the many eminent scholars in Nara or on Mount High, and inquire fully of them about the essential for birth. I simply accept and entrust myself to what a good teacher told me, quote, just say the name and be saved by Amida. Nothing else is involved. I have no idea whether the Nembutsu is truly the seed for my being born in the Pure Land, or whether it is the karmic act for which I must fall into hell. Should I have been deceived by Honan, and, saying the name, plunge utterly into hell, even then I would have no regrets. The person who could have attained Buddhahood by endeavoring in other practices might regret that he had been deceived if he said the Nembutsu and so fell into hell. But I am one for whom any practice is difficult to accomplish, so hell is to be my home, whatever I do. If Amida's primal vow is true and real, Sakyamuni's teachings cannot be lies. If the Buddha's teaching is true and real, Shantao's commentaries cannot be lies. If Shantao's commentaries are true and real, can what Honan said be a lie? If what Honan said is true and real, then surely my words cannot be empty. Such, in essence, is the Shinjin of the foolish person that I am. Beyond this, whether you entrust yourself taking up the Nembutsu or whether you abandon it, is your own individual decision. Profession of Faith. I shall end this brief introduction to Shin Buddhism with the profession of faith from Reverend Tsuji's outline. I hope that these few comments and excerpts have aroused your interest in Shin Buddhism enough for you to want to study further. Namo Amida Butsu. 1. We affirm our faith in Amida Buddha, whose infinite light of wisdom and compassion shines on all corners of the universe. 2. We feel deeply that our hearts are dark with ignorance and passions, and even our good acts are tainted with the poison of selfishness, and that by ourselves we are incapable of true goodness. 3. We are firmly determined to seek the spirit of Amita's primal vow, which embraces all and forsakes none, which frees us from the world of impermanence and assures our birth into the Pure Land. 4. We rely wholeheartedly on Amita's grace, and, renouncing all good works contrived by self-power, we depend for our enlightenment on faith in other power. 5. We rejoice that this grace is accorded freely and equally to us, as well as all other living beings. This joy pervades our every thought and act. 6. We recite Namu Amida Butsu in gratitude for the great compassionate vow. 7. We regard all things with profound thankfulness, and whether suffering or happiness comes to us, we are content in the realization that Amita's grace is always with us. 8. We search within ourselves by the light of Amita's compassion and find that we are drowning in the ocean of selfish desires, that we have lost our way in the pursuit of power and gain. Though we have entered the company of the faithful, we are pained that true joy does not brighten our hearts. 9. We treasure the Dharma, the Buddha's teaching, and long to hear it again and again until we are fired with zeal to practice it. We strive to avoid the sinner's way and to model our conduct on that of virtuous people. We desire the company of good friends who follow the same way, and we wish to be good friends to all who need us. We are resolved to persevere unceasingly in the aspiration for enlightenment, in gratitude for Amita's grace. 10. We resolve to do our daily tasks with the same wholehearted reverence as if they were religious duties. We devote ourselves to being good members of our families, good workers in our jobs, and good citizens of our country. In this, we seek no reward and simply act as our gratitude prompts us. The power of Namu Amida Butsu clears the path before us, gives us courage, frees us from evil influences, and brings countless good influences to bless us. It casts the light of infinite love and insight onto the road of our life. Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu.